The number of calories per hot dog was collected for 54 different brands of hot dogs. Ballpark turkey franks have a z-score of negative 0.86, and Oscar Mayer low-fat have a z-score of negative 3.27. Which of the following are true? So you can remember there's two pieces for a z-score. You have the sign, and the size of the z-score. The sign determines if it's below average or above average. If it's positive, that means it's above average. If it's negative, that means it's below average. So both of them have a negative z-score, so they're both below average in terms of calories per hot dog. And then the size tells us how unusual or how extreme they are. The further and further away from zero, the larger and larger the size, the more and more extreme that they are. So it says the caloric content for the ballpark turkey franks is more extreme than the Oscar Mayer. Well, the turkey is negative 0.86, the low fat is negative 3.27, so since this one is the larger, has the larger size, it's the one that's more extreme. So A is incorrect. B says both of these brands are below average with respect to caloric content. Both of them are negative, which indicates that they're both below average, so B is correct. 26 says, suppose that 15% of UVM professors use public transportation to get to school. If we take a random sample of 30 UVM professors, which of the following are true about the sampling distribution of the sample proportion? So we know what's true about p hat. The sampling distribution is normal because n is greater than or equal to 30. So this statement is incorrect. When we're dealing with p hats, what we want is n times p to be greater than or equal to 10, and n times 1 minus p to be greater than or equal to 10. So n times p is going to be 30 times 0.15, which gives us 4.5. So this statement isn't true. And this would be 30 times 0.85, which is 25.5. So this is true. But since this part, our n times p, is less than 10, it's not going to be normal. 2 says the mean of the sampling distribution is 0.15. So the center of any sampling distribution is always the parameter of interest. It says that 15% of UVM professors, so that's talking about all UVM professors, so 0.15 would be the parameter, so 2 is correct. And then 3 says the standard error will be larger if we use a larger sample. So larger sample indicates that the statistic gets more accurate. The more accurate the statistic, the smaller the standard error. So 3 is also incorrect. So the only one that is true is statement 2. 27 says, in order to determine if the proportion of Stat 111 students who have majors in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences is less than 1/3, a random sample of 50 Stat 111 students is selected. The sample proportion is one standard error less than 1/3. We want to know what is the value of the test statistic. So this tells us the sample proportion is one standard error less. So all a test statistic is, it's the number of standard errors from the null value. So this says it's one standard error less than 1/3. 1/3 is our null value. And since it's less, this indicates that it's negative. So the correct answer then would be B. It's -1, because it's below, indicating that should be negative, and the test statistic is the number of standard errors. So if it says it's one standard error less, that means the test statistic is going to be -1. 28 says, my nephew is in the 3rd percentile for his height among boys his age, and my niece is in the 10th percentile for height among girls her age. Which of the following must be true? A says my niece is taller than my nephew. So what's really true is my nephew is 6 and my niece is 4. So a 6-year-old is going to be taller than a 4-year-old. So just because the niece is in the 10th percentile for height among girls her age, and my nephew is in the 3rd percentile for height among boys his age, my niece is taller relative to her population than my nephew is relative to his population. But it doesn't necessarily mean that my niece is taller than my nephew. B says my niece is taller than 90% of girls her age. So this percentile is the percentage less than her height. So she's taller than 10%, not 90%. So B is also incorrect. And then C says my nephew is taller than 3% of boys his age. So that's exactly what the percentile tells us. How many people are at his height or shorter?